Yes, my name is Bill Exley, and I was asked by Philippa to make a few remarks this afternoon and tell some stories at this celebration of the life of Alan Dayton. I'd like to begin by thanking Philippa and Patrick for arranging the portraits by Alan, which we see around us, and Eric Stock and Catherine Morrissey for inviting all of us here to Studio 105, a place where Alan often enjoyed himself. When I was a little boy, my mother told me that my very old Aunt Mary was coming to visit and that I should be very nice to her because she was getting old and she was going to die soon. So I waited for Aunt Mary's arrival, and as soon as she came in the door, I ran up to her and blurted out, "Hello, Aunt Mary, I'm going to be very nice to you because you're getting old and you're going to die soon." When she then said, "What did the child say?" I started to repeat what I had already said, but was stopped when my mother put her hand over my mouth, preventing me from saying any more. When several years later, after long failure to recognize anybody, Aunt Mary finally died, I attended her funeral in a very serious funeral home setting. But the people there, obviously relieved that her problems had come to an end, had smuggled in various bottles of alcohol and cigars, and the gathering got louder and louder until finally a very sober funeral director, dressed in a black suit, entered and told us all to keep it down. Alan would be pleased today by what he would regard as the natural tendency of lugubriousness to change into festivity. And he would have similarly appreciated this informal gathering and would want us to have a party for him. The last photograph I took of Alan was at a New Year's Eve party held at the home of me and my wife Norma before January the 1st, 2013. It was taken about 3 a.m. and he, with Philippa and Eric Stock, were the last people to leave the party. Incidentally, our house, 1014 Wellington Street, was the same one that Alan lived in during the 1970s with Sue and with her children, Jeanette, Sarah, Paul, and Daniel. Later, it was also indirectly my first introduction to Alan because it was there that I saw for the first time one of his portraits, the one he did of Jerry Parker, who owned the house at the time. Many people living in London then and later saw many of Alan's portraits, which revealed his amazing ability to catch the personalities of people and suggest their characters and interests. I saw portraits he had done of many of the people I knew: Don Vincent, Jamie Rainey, Colleen Thibodeau, Don Gutteridge, Greg Kernow, and many others. But it was only in 2006 when he did a portrait of me that I understood a bit of how he was able to produce such fine work. He chatted with me at length, asked me questions about my personal history, my friends, the other members of the Nihilist Spasm Band, of whom he was also doing portraits, my interest in art, my favorite music, and many other matters. He also took photographs. When he finally presented me with the completed portrait he had painted me in front of a background of figures from the engravings of William Blake for the Book of Job, including above my head the figure of Job himself. Through this background, Alan was suggesting my early church experience as well as my interest in literature. Or at least that's what I originally thought. But as soon as my fellow Nihilist Spasm Band member, Art Pratton, saw the painting, he said, looking at Job, "That's Hugh." Art was referring to Hugh McIntyre, who had recently died and who had always enjoyed trying to get the better of me in arguments, and who had a favorite expression when he talked to me: "Wrong again, Bill." Art thought it likely that Alan had put Hugh in my portrait so that he would always be there above my head, deflating my pretensions. After several other people quite separately told me that Job certainly did look like Hugh, I wondered if Alan's well-known sense of humor had revealed itself here in an unexpected way. My own experiences of Alan are, of course, only a part of his varied career. He was born in New York City in 1949, was raised in California, and came to Canada in 1969, first coming to Montreal and then moving to Toronto. He came to London in 1974 after seeing the Jack Chambers retrospective at the Art Gallery of Ontario, and lived here for about 20 years, doing portraits of artists and other well-known people, such as Timothy Findlay, Margaret Atwood, Tony Urquhart, and others not so well known. He went back to the United States for about 10 years with Philippa, and exhibited in Florida galleries, and didn't get eaten by alligators, a fate also avoided by Eric and Catherine. He returned to London in 2005 for the last 8 years of his life. In the River Project in 2008, Herman Gooden quotes Alan's own words, explaining why his seeing Jack Chambers' paintings in Toronto led him to come to our city, where he spent 3 decades of his life. I didn't know him or his work at all, walked into the gallery and was really quite moved by it. And he looked like such an approachable guy in his photographs, none of that Salvador Dali exhibitionist routine. I liked all the blue sky in the paintings, the feeling he expressed for his community. And that was London. I drove over one day to have a look, and there were all those trees in the sky. I recognized it all from his paintings. It felt like the opening of some Fellini film where you get the bird's eye view of a community and you know that everything you'll need for a great story is being laid out before you. The frame is small enough that you can take it all in, but it's big enough that you know there's going to be some surprises. There's enough scope to allow diversity and movement. London is a great resource for an artist. A greater artist could do even more with less. But the human pageant is all here. The human pageant is all here. And here we are today, by the river, celebrating Alan's life by looking at his paintings and visiting with cheer and telling other stories about him. In reply to Alan, who unexpectedly inserted Hugh into my portrait, I would like to conclude by unexpectedly quoting 10 lines from a poem which Alan probably would not like, by a poet he would probably disapprove of, but which is appropriate today. The poem is by Alfred Tennyson, the Victorian Poet Laureate, from In Memoriam, Part 107, a poem about Tennyson's friend, who also died too young. But fetch the wine, arrange the board, and brim the glass. Bring in great logs and let them lie, to make a solid core of heat. Be cheerful-minded, talk and treat of all things, even as he were by. We keep the day, with festive cheer, with books and music. Surely we will drink to him, where'er he be, and sing the songs he loved to hear. Herman Gooden wrote a very fine article on Alan in today's London Free Press, and would you like to read it, Herman?